Welcome to this Skillick Explains video, and this time I want to take on a topic which has quite a general application actually, and not just in finance, but we're going to stick to finance and investing here mainly, how and why we tend to be fooled quite easily, me included, by big numbers. Now don't take my word for it necessarily, let's go straight into Barry Ritholtz, famous blogger and wealth manager in the US. Anytime someone trots out a big number, in almost any context actually, and the media love big numbers as we'll see in a moment, make sure you understand the context and look for the denominator, which is a similar way of saying the same thing. I'll try and explain what he means in just a moment. So what would be some big, exciting, scary looking numbers? Well, here are three examples. Stocks plunge 50 billion. That's a favorite of journalists. All right, rather than saying the FTSE 100 lost so many points, they think, no, let's just go in with the value of the losses, because 50 billion sounds like a big number, and it certainly is a big number, but do we have the context? Do we have the denominator? 50 billion out of what? Secondly, firm sheds 2,000 staff. Well, it all depends how many they started with. All right, if you've only got 2,000 staff, there's your denominator. 2,000 over 2,000 is all of them. But if you're Exxon, from where this was drawn, October 2025, and you've got 65,000, 2,000 is still a lot, and you don't want to be one of those 2,000, but out of 65,000, less drastic. And do we know why? And do we know who they are? Okay, and do we know whether they're being not replaced or replaced? You get the idea. Profits hit 100 million. So what? Journalists love round numbers. Does 100 million matter? Where did we start from? Where were we last year? Are we talking about a drop to 100 million or an increase to 100 million? Are we talking about a firm that used to make losses and is now profitable? All right. In other words, you need the context. You need the denominator. The denominator being the out of what number are you plucking this one, if that makes sense. So to summarize that, what Ritholtz is saying and what I'm endorsing here is, if you're talking about 50 billion wiped off stocks, which stocks? All of them? Just the FTSE 100, which is still, by value, a huge proportion of them? Is it global stocks? I mean, what's the number? How quickly? Because that matters. Are we talking about over the course of a few minutes? Are we talking about days, weeks, months, and so on? What's your benchmark? Okay. What else are you looking at that might have dropped at a similar level or less to draw a conclusion about what this means for the market you're looking at? In the middle one, how big's the firm? Which staff? Why? Is there any replacement going on? We need background, we need context. And the starting point is 100 million an important number? Where do we begin? All right, are we talking about an increase, a decrease? So what we're saying here is you need context. The numbers are designed sometimes to get you to do something without thinking, but it's really important to think. Now, allied to that, okay, we are suckers for what I call the big impact, low probability event. And the media love to do this, and be careful in financial markets because so do people who are selling stuff. Now, 4 examples here: being attacked by a shark, bit of a grim topic, but dying of heart disease or cancer, being killed or injured on the road, or falling into the Grand Canyon. Recently, I seem to be seeing quite a few stories about this one. All right, certainly more than I used to. But just to put the probability on it, if you like, if I was actually saying realistically which one of these should the average person on the planet be worried about or be doing something about, actually it goes 1, 2, wait for it. Some people may not even know, you probably know where the Grand Canyon is, but falling into the Grand Canyon is statistically, believe it or not, more likely than that. The problem is, if you are attacked by a shark, it's an example of a pretty catastrophic event, even if it's highly unlikely. But it's the kind of thing that makes the headlines, all right? Because headline writers, I'm afraid, do like to look on the dark side of life sometimes, and it's true of financial markets as well as anywhere else. And they do like to pick on the event, which is never realistically probably going to happen to most people or many people at all, but nonetheless makes for a dramatic read across a news feed or a website. So you take my point. I won't labour it too much. So the media loves events which are high impact, low probability. Arguably, we should focus on the exact reverse. Okay, we need to worry about the things that, number one, are more likely to happen to us and that we could potentially mitigate, do something about, okay? But I'm afraid the sort of boring, more regular stuff doesn't always generate the headlines. Now, another example of big numbers and people making mistakes. And people watching this video probably wouldn't fall into these traps, but you know, the odds are one-off wins. One-off wins is like, you know, change my life tomorrow, get rich quickly. Don't do it the long way through compound growth. Is there a shortcut? And shortcuts, again, draw people in. Now, I don't have a problem with buying a lottery ticket for a laugh, but your odds of winning are actually around 14 million to 1 against. Okay, so never buy one, realistically thinking you will win. I know someone's got to, but there are other ways of increasing your chances of at least making something. Again, premium bonds. You know, some people love to have them. They like the idea of a bit of risk, you know, a random prize. Maybe I'll win the big prize one day. This is paid out by the government, by the way. But actually the odds, again, are not in your favor, 22,000 to 1. And for those people who like CFDs, bringing it back to financial markets, all right, 80% of them lose money, and that's something that the companies that sell them try to build in. These are bets essentially on the direction of shares, indices, the outcome of football games, and so on. So my point is, in all three cases, you know, they try and drag you in with the marketing, make these sound like life transforming ways of investing money, if investing is the right way of putting it, but your odds of winning are actually in reality pretty small. We like the big numbers, but we need to look under the bonnet. Okay, now, looking at investing, bringing this back home if you like, there are things we should never do. One, buying single stocks, and people do, they take a punt. Number two, trying to time the market, particularly if you combine 1 and 2 together. And number three, over trading, often as a result. All right, so again, tempting, you know, someone pumps a stock in an internet chat room, on a bulletin board. All right, lots of people think, oh, exciting, this is the next name in AI, the next name in technology, and they're drawn in with the prospect of big profits, getting ahead of the crowd, getting in on something not everyone knows about, moving quickly. Okay, maybe there's a bit of celebrity hype in there as well. Don't be tempted. Now, I covered the pump and dump in another video, but I just want to go back to why these three things are such a bad idea, and in particular this one in the middle, market timing. I'm going to do it with a chart. Now, hindsight in investing is a wonderful thing. All right, let's say this is a single stock price, all right, over time. Doesn't matter, you know, 20 years it could be, and you know, because this is a historic chart, what happened in the middle. Obviously, you would say, well, clearly to make money, what I should either do is have bought back here and then waited for compound growth to work its magic over there. Some people will be thinking, no, it's just too boring, it takes too long, that's too slow. What you want to do, Tim, ideally is buy there and sell there, get your cash off the table, job done, all right? Or, you know, if you can see this coming, you want to get out there, wait a bit, get back in there, happy days, right? But that's with hindsight, okay? People acting without hindsight usually get it wrong. And the reason is, how do you know you're there before it happens? All right. What if you then panic, okay, stay out of the market too long and don't get back in until there? All right. Or what if you get out there, let's say, okay, and you think, oh, crikey, am I going to miss the bottom? All right. And you never go back in, or you wait too long. In other words, market timing requires two decisions. When will I get out? Could be there, could be there. If you're very, very lucky, all right, you might get out at the top with an opportunity to buy at the bottom, but equally you might do it in exactly the reverse order, okay? So you might buy at the top and then panic and sell at the bottom, all right? You can see the problem. It's basically very difficult to judge what the market's going to do next. Very few people get it right, and those that do tend to rely on luck more than they do judgment, okay? In the meantime, you'll probably be over trading because you'll be making buy and sell decisions, all of them costing you money, costing you commission, costing you churn, as it's called. And as I say, in the worst case, when people get market timing wrong, they not only lose a lot of money, but they then get put off shares altogether and never go back. And they then sit in cash, okay, over this whole period, or certainly from here to here, they sit in cash and their wealth gets destroyed by inflation, something I've covered in other videos. Okay, so just to bring this sort of towards a close, big numbers, all right? And I've thrown up lots of big numbers, basically are there to get your attention. They're there to make you act, and they're generally there usually to separate you from your money. So always think, what's the context? All right, why am I being told this number? Why does this number matter? Let me just stand back and think for myself. Do I know the denominator? Do I have enough information to actually make any kind of judgment about what this means? And if in doubt, don't. Okay, and you know, why am I being told this? Okay, why is this suddenly such an important piece of information for Tim Bennett, the long-term investor? And chances are a lot of it is just noise you can safely ignore. So, no more ado, I'll just reference the other sources of information at killick.com/resources, and any questions specifically on that video, there's an email address to my left.